Welcome. In this demonstration, we will describe a scenario for using Rational Asset Manager, RAM, to store, exchange, discuss, and download virtual appliances described using open virtual format. The scenario begins as Vicky Clark, a virtual appliance consumer, accesses RAM to check for availability of a WebSphere virtual appliance with a Linux operating system and the VMware hypervisor. Vicky uses her username and password to log into RAM. Once she is logged in, she clicks on the search button to access a screen where she can specify the search parameters. First, Vicky selects virtual appliance as the required asset type. Next, she enters WebSphere Linux VMware to describe the desired virtual appliance and clicks Search. In this case, the search produces no matching results. Vicky relaxes her search conditions and uses just WebSphere VMware as search text. Vicky clicks on the results hyperlink to get details about the discovered appliance. The hyperlink takes her to the Asset General Details page that lists the attributes specific to the virtual appliance assets. In this case, the appliance has a Windows installation instead of Linux, but the virtualization technology is VMware. In RAM, every asset can be associated with multiple web-based forums. Vicky clicks on the Forum tab of the appliance and chooses the Discussion forum. The page lists the assets that are discussed in the forum and also shows the specific topics in the forum discussion. To ask about a Linux version of the appliance, Vicky creates a new topic titled Need a Linux Version. She writes a brief note asking for a new version of the appliance and posts it to the forum. In RAM, every topic has an RSS feed that can be used to monitor the discussion. From the browser, Vicky copies the URL of the topic RSS feed. Her Lotus SameTime client has a built-in RSS feed reader, so Vicky opens the reader, adds the RSS subscription URL, and specifies the RAM login credentials. At this point, the feed is listed as one of the subscriptions, and Vicky will be notified when a new message appears on the discussion topic. Also, Vicky subscribes to the feed of her original search of WebSphere Linux VMware, so that she will be notified if matching appliances appear in the repository. Andy Peters is an appliance provider who created the WebSphere Windows appliance found by Vicky in RAM. Since Andy has an RSS subscription to the Asset Forum, he receives a notification about Vicky's request for a Linux version of the appliance. To read the request, he logs into RAM using his credentials. Since Andy has a Linux-based WebSphere appliance available from his website, he decides to help Vicky with her request by checking the appliance into RAM. The Linux-based WebSphere appliance on Andy's site is described using Open Virtual Format, OVF. The OVF for the appliance is a standards-based XML file that specifies location of the binaries for the appliance, a human-readable description of the appliance content, and a collection of properties, such as a quantity of memory and disk space needed to run the appliance. Finally, the OVF file specifies products that are delivered in the appliance, for instance WebSphere Application Server and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. To check in the appliance into RAM, Andy uses the OVF for RAM tool. From a console, he specifies parameters to the tool, including a command to create a RAM asset, an asset name based on the contents of the appliance, an asset version, and finally a URL to the OVF file for the appliance. When executed, the tool creates an asset in RAM based on the contents of the OVF file. In this scenario, since the WebSphere virtual appliance is a large file that would have taken a long time to upload to RAM, Andy chose to have a RAM asset store a URL to the appliance. After the tool is finished, it displays information on how to access the appliance in RAM, and also the appliance characteristics from the OVF file. At this point, the asset is created in RAM, However, it's not yet available to Vicky Clark and other users, since the asset has not passed the review. Carol Adams is the Community Administrator for Virtual Appliance Assets in RAM, and she's responsible for reviewing and approving appliances submitted to RAM. Since she is subscribed to the RSS feed for all virtual appliance assets, she receives a notification that a new asset was submitted. The Linux-based WebSphere appliance submitted by Andy is shown in a plan review. After switching to the Review tab for this asset, Carol starts a reviewing process by clicking Start Review. At this point, she can download the asset to study it further. In this scenario, Carol approves the asset and writes a note indicating that the asset passed her review. Once she clicks Accept, the asset is placed into an approved state. Back at Andy's workstation, he receives an RSS notification from his same-time client. A new RSS feed entry indicates that his WebSphere on Linux asset was approved. He opens the feed entry that takes him to the asset page in RAM. Since Andy is an owner of both WebSphere on Windows and on Linux assets, he decides to share the discussion forum for the two. He opens the Windows asset and accesses the discussion forum. In the current configuration, the forum is visible only from the Windows asset, so Andy uses the link asset feature to search for the Linux asset and adds it to the forum. At this point, Andy is ready to tell forum users about the availability of the new asset. He opens the original message from Vicky and posts his announcement to the forum. Vicky Clark receives two notifications in her Lotus Same-Time RSS client about the availability of the new appliance. First, she sees the response from Andy in the forum. When Vicky accesses the notification, she is taken to Andy's announcement about the availability of the WebSphere on Linux appliance and RAM. After reading the forum post, Vicky accesses the second notification in the RSS reader, which takes her directly to the new asset. Here, she can review the asset specification to confirm that it is a Linux-based appliance. Since the specification describes the Linux version Vicky wanted, she is ready to download it and start running the appliance. This concludes our scenario for using Rational Asset Manager for OVF virtual appliances. To find out more about the implementation of the scenario or about the OVF for RAM tool, please visit our wiki at the URL shown on the screen. Thank you for watching.